Spiritual Fitness podcast. I'm back again with another episode. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects and topics, astrology, but not wholesome, placid. We're talking about true, I think I said it right, Sidereal Astrology. And I have the astrologist expert, educator, Athen Chimenti, who did my chart about a week ago. And honestly, people, this guy's changing my life just with the lunar nodes, breaking down past life, new life. And he's here on the podcast. He's going to break down the importance and the truth of astrology and why we need to know it and how it can change our life. Athen, welcome to Spiritual Fitness Podcast. How are you? Thank you for taking your time to be with me today.
It's great to be here, Eric. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yes. So let's just get into it. I mean, how long have you been doing astrology and why astrology for you? How did that change your life to be where you are today?
Yeah, so I've always been a very left brain thinker, very rational person. If you talked to me about astrology like 15 plus years ago, I probably would have maybe tried to have a debate with you or something about the at the time ridiculousness of it or whatever. But it's because I always liked this idea of being able to rationally make sense of things and having a more kind of scientific approach to life. But what happened is I was always really into personal development, and of course that led to meditation eventually, which I would say is probably the singular point where things really started to change for me in that realm. So once I started meditating more, I really started to become much more aware that there's more than, of course, just the five senses. And from there, I had a couple of profound spiritual awakenings. I was living in a homestead in Death Valley, just outside of Las Vegas. And, from there, really dove deep into myself and came to some big spiritual awakenings that, of course, there's so much more to life. But, my rational scientific self never left. And so I was getting into a lot of metaphysical stuff, but astrology really appealed to me because it is very verifiable. You can go out and see exactly where the planets are and really make a very practical and tangible sort of interpretation of this stuff. So I think that's why I got into, astrology specifically. I would say it's probably the spiritual study or at least one of the spiritual tools that is the most physical or grounded in what you can see. And so from there, just gravitated towards it, started reading charts from my friends and of course, those close to me, and started a YouTube channel. And from there, everything just sort of snowballed. So I started with, traditional tropical astrology. And then once I found out, well, I always kind of knew it wasn't the actual sky, but, once that hit, I got into true sidereal, which is using that physical, more grounded view of the sky.
So let's talk about true sidereal astrology. What is that? 'Cause you said the sky, and why is it not so common mainstream in the way we do whole sign or tropical? I don't even know the difference between those two. What I've noticed in my past when getting readings is that I'm kind of like the houses are just one house off, or the planet might be off, my moon sign might be off. So why should we consider true sidereal astrology over the other ones from your mind, from your perspective?
Right. So I actually believe that all of them are useful, just the same way we can use all these different tools, tarot, numerology, whatever. And I still think it's all pointing towards the same thing. It's like looking at the self from like a different angle. No matter how you look at it, you're seeing the same self. But of course, the more perspectives you can have, the better. So I do recommend, of course, still using these other tools. But I do gravitate for true sidereal for the reasons I just said, just it being very grounded in what's physically taking place. So just so the listeners know here, so true sidereal is basically using the visible sky. So we would think that that's what astrology is, right? So when you hear your sun sign, maybe your sun sign's Leo or something like this, we think that that's where the sun was when we were born, right? We sort of make that assumption. But in the West, that's not the case. So when we're doing this kind of mainstream Western astrology, the sun sign, the chances are that's actually not where the sun was when you were born. In fact, if it is Leo, you're probably more likely to be a Cancer, for example. So this is because mainstream astrology, or specifically tropical astrology, which is the name of the Western mainstream astrology, that uses the seasons for determining the signs. And what I mean by that is like, you know how every month it's exactly 30 days for each sign and it never deviates, and it's static like that. Um, and that's because right at the beginning of the spring, mainstream astrology says that that's the beginning of the zodiac. So we're going to start Aries right at the beginning of spring. That's not how the sky actually is. So the way the sky actually is that the sun does not return to the same zodiac sign every year.
Oh,
So it's very subtle. It's very
wow.
subtle. The returning of the sun changes 1 degree. So if we think 360 degrees for the whole sky or the ecliptic, it changes 1 degree every 72 years. So that means that 2,000 years ago, the sun was at the beginning of Aries during the spring equinox, when Western astrology, the way we use it now, tropical astrology, was really born 2,000 years ago. So at the time, it made sense. It was, I think, mainly used to keep everything simple. Instead of making all these extra calculations, let's just fix the zodiac to the seasons and use the dates, the Gregorian calendar. It makes it very easy. But because of this subtle change, which is called precession, here we are 2,000 years later, and we're almost a full sign different from the 30 degrees. It's 24. But with true sidereal, which takes into account the actual size of the constellations, it can be up to 2 signs different. So one of the most notable is like someone might think that they're a Scorpio, but they're actually a Virgo, and Scorpio and Virgo are 2 signs different. So this can happen at times too. And again, the chances are it will be different. So that's basically what true sidereal is. Now, there is a regular sidereal system, which is mainly used in Hindu astrology. The Hindus have definitely stayed true to the visible sky, but even they use a simplified system where it's all even 30 degrees. So that's regular sidereal, like in Vedic or Hindu astrology. And then there's true sidereal, which then uses the actual sizes because the constellations are different sizes, and that changes it even more. So long story short, you've got tropical and you've got sidereal. You've got the sort of Western and you've got the Eastern,
Wait,
astrology. Yeah, and that's where the big differences are. And then, people like me step in and it's like, all right, well, there's actually true sidereal, and then it just complicates the thing even more. And
mhm.
that's why we have like 3, 4, 5 signs or whatever. But long story short, we're using the visible sky with true sidereal. That's why I like it. I do find it to be extremely accurate. I still think tropical or mainstream Western is accurate too. I just think it shows a little more of the physical self. If you think of kind of what the seasons represent, it's more static, it's more physical, it's the Maya, the wheels of karma. That's going to represent the more physical self. So still accurate if you're looking at it from that lens. But yeah, I do like to go to what I call the kind of fundamental chart, which is where astrology really came from, which is the sky, and using that chart as the foundation.
God, I always would say when people talk about God and the universe, I always would tell people, I said, the universe is your body because you can see it, and God is your soul. So I think what sidereal astrology is like your soul, DNA, and then it's like the tropical or the Western is more like your physical, like you can see it chart, right? DNA, right? It's interesting because when you talk to people, they say, "What's your moon? What's your rising?" And it's like, "Oh, I'm a Pisces sun, Sag moon, Libra rising." But from me studying astrology on my own, I know about the nodes, the lunar nodes, the north node, the south node, and I was like, "Oh, this makes sense." But I would get confused because I just started maybe a year ago understanding the houses. And before we get into the lunar nodes, uh, so like I said, people who are listening, watching, and he did my chart. Athen did my chart a week ago. So what I come to realization, and let me know if this is true or not. So my midheaven, right, from the western side, from what I see, is in Leo. However, my north node is in Pisces in the fifth house. So I know, correct me if I'm wrong, the fifth house is the Leo house, right? It's all about the stage, entertainment, and So is there some type of connection, some type of congruency where your north node is going to be somewhat attached to your midheaven, your MC, in your natal chart? Because I just figured that out. Like, is this because it makes sense? It's kind of like the same placements, but it's not. I don't know if I'm asking the right question, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly right. So we have
Oh,
associations.
yeah.
We have the fifth house is, like you said, associated with Leo.
Yeah.
So for you, that means that, of course, then your North Node being in the fifth house is associated with your midheaven because it's in Leo. But the link is the fifth house and Leo being similar energy. Another one would be the sun, for
Okay.
example. So these are the like three things that are similar. Is the sun rules Leo, which is associated with the fifth house. So that means the sun, Leo, and the fifth house are the same energy. They're just different expressions of that
Oh,
same energy, right?
my son is
So,
in the
so
fifth
the
house, Pisces. It's in the fifth
right.
house.
So for you, there's a lot of connection with those, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, so you can look at those associations and yes, get more information on whatever you're wanting to look at. So in this case, you're wanting more information on your North Node.
Right.
And so you would go to that connection. If like, let's say it was my chart. So I have North Node in the first house. That's associated with Aries and it's associated with Mars. So if I wanted more information on my North Node, I would go look where my Mars is and I would go look where my Aries is. And that's going to tell me more information on the North Node. So there's definitely associations you want to draw to get more information on something like that. It's either rulerships or significators, technical terms for it, but it's really just the associations between these planets. But that's basically what we're doing with astrology. We're trying to get a more holistic picture of the
Yeah.
person because it's literally impossible to like obviously conceptualize someone's life path or fully understand it or something like this. Like always with astrology, we're only ever looking at like a small piece of the pie or the puzzle, right? But we do our best to try to get as many of those pieces together as we possibly can. And that's obviously a great way to do it. See what all the connections are and try to get that more kind of holistic view where you're able to see like multiple parts of the self or multiple parts of the experience and try to make sense of it. So in your case, the midheaven's associated with career, right? So the way I would describe that is your life path is to develop more self-expression. That's fifth house.
Yeah.
Where do you express yourself? In the Leo area, which is what? Your midheaven.
Yeah.
So you're expressing yourself through the public and through your career.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, for you, the sun then comes back to the fifth. But if your sun was anywhere else, there would be another connection there. Like if your sun had been in, I don't know, the area of relationships, then maybe you'd be doing more one-on-one kind of stuff publicly or with your life path or something like this, you see. But for
And,
you,
and
it's very much centered around like the link between self-expression and what you're doing publicly and productively.
and a lot of my clients are what I'm supposed to be embarking on in this lifetime. They're more like independent owners, CEOs. They're successful, and they're so good at being them for their business. And I'm like, oh, they're my mirror. Like they're showing me how I need to be to get more of that energy in this lifetime. So can we transition? Let's talk about the lunar nodes, the north node, the south node. From my understanding, your north node is what you're here to do in this lifetime. Your south node is what you're here, what you were in a past life. So to people who might not know, can you kind of give them your interpretation of it to make it make sense? Because I think this is, you showed me this is one of the most important placements within your chart. If you're looking at your chart like
Yeah.
right now, right? To know.
Yeah, it's crazy how accurate it is and yeah, how helpful it can be. That's why I do my readings centered around them. But so what they are is they're basically the intersecting paths of the sun and moon.
Yeah.
So where we have eclipses, basically. So, you know, the sun has its path, the moon has its path, and then those paths are going to intersect somewhere. This really affects the life path. But anyways, that's what the nodes are. They're not like a literal thing or whatever. They're just these kind of points. But if you consider that the sun and moon are the most important parts of the chart, right? So those of you into astrology know that like the sun and moon are the most important. You could have the ascendant in there, but that's not a planet.
Yeah.
Most important planets is the sun and moon, right? So their intersecting paths become extremely important in terms of how to integrate the self, because the sun is the kind of yang part of the self and the moon is the yin part of the self. So the nodes are basically saying, okay, how do we integrate this polarity? How do we integrate the yang and yin parts of the self? And then they're doing it in a way that's saying, okay, this is more like the life path, which is like the actions we should take or the sort of direction we should go into in life. So yeah, so definitely check out your nodes. If you don't know what house placement they're in, we do have a chart calculator on the website, masteringthezodiac.com. That's obviously using true sidereal, but the house placements are usually quite similar to the other systems too. But check out the houses specifically. Those are going to be the most personal. So the north node is like the horseshoe this way, like right set up like an N, and then the south node is like a U, like this. And yeah, so the south node represents, like you said, the past, what you might call the past life, the soul's roots. I like to use past life because it's like a way we can understand it physically on Earth and stuff, assuming we have, these past lives and everything. But it helps us understand, like, the energy that's associated with it. So the South Node will describe where we've had a lot of karmic energy or past life energy. In this life, it shows up as our comfort zones, what we're familiar with, and what we tend to default into. Now,
Mm.
it's important to have those times of like rest and like default, to go back into our south nodes. But if we were to stay exclusively in our south nodes, we wouldn't grow, we wouldn't develop, right? And so that's where the north node comes in. So the north node, we would say, is our future karma or our dharma, in the sense that it's like what we're here to learn and grow in this lifetime to evolve the soul, right? So if we were practicing like maybe a type of Buddhism or something where we didn't want to like build karma and we didn't want to be affected by past life karma, we really want to live like in between these two extremes, right? But of course, we're physical, beings having this, or spiritual beings having this physical experience. So the south node is the spiritual part, and then the north node is telling us how to incorporate it physically, like in this world. So that's basically what we want to do, but we want to make sure we do it in the appropriate way, because like I said, if we go to either extreme, that's where we have the most challenges in life. So the most stuck periods of our lives are when we're very past life or south node heavy. Um,
Hey,
right. So
astrology is like healing. Like, just how you explain that. My South Node is in Virgo. When I'm working so much and being so disciplined and structured, it's great. But then I'm like, I burn out. But when I'm just like having fun, it's fifth house Pisces. I'm like meditating, I'm praying, I'm on the beach. I'm just like, yeah, life's great. I'm on these shows. It's more freeing in my life is jumping timelines. And this is why what you do, like people listen, I've had so many readings in my lifetime. This guy, what he brings is so authentic and so transparent. It just jumps all the, I don't want to say the bull crap, but all the stuff that we don't need to kind of understand why we're what we're here to do. And I think he amplified my voice and my presence and what I'm here to do. And so North Node and South Node is so important in the way you explain it. And by the way, we will, and I will put the all his information in the show notes. Um, but yeah, I just really, damn, it's so good. Like, is this is your own interpretation and analogy that you use? Because I think your analogy is kind of like, bring people more in. And so I want to get into this next phase. How do we get people to trust astrology? Because I know what you do, I already trust it, but you make it so real where I have to trust it, right? How do we get people to more trust this, esoteric or metaphysic or this star system in the sky? What is the, standard of
yeah.
procedure for that?
Yeah, well, so I like to, of course, give absolute freedom and say, look, if it's not resonating with you, like, you don't need it. You know what I mean? Um, you don't need astrology the same way you don't need like any of these other tools. Tools are great. Tools are great. They help facilitate the life path. But like, for example, like in your reading, it should have just felt really confirming, and it should have felt like I actually didn't tell you anything you didn't already know.
Right. I
Right.
didn't.
So if you were already like really attuned to yourself, which you are, and that's why you resonated so much with it, I think. But like, you didn't really need the reading, right? So hopefully I gave you some more confirmation and some more conviction to continue doing what you're doing. But again, it was nothing new. So look, it's like, I think everything crosses our path when it's meant to cross. And if astrology is not crossing your path or you're not feeling resonating towards it, forget about it. You don't need it. But if it's starting to become an interest, if you're interested in it, then I say just go type in your birth details. Again, there's a free chart calculator on the website. Type it in. There's interpretations there, and see if it resonates. This was the sky when you were born. There's obviously more to life than just the five senses. We're just these little like meat pockets walking around on this flying rock through
Yeah.
space at who knows how fast or whatever. And like there's more to life, right? And I'm not saying astrology is the end all be all to all of this, but things are obviously happening in cycles. Like this whole universe is I believe, cycles within cycles. It's almost like a giant cog, if you will, of like interconnected parts, not like Newtonianly, strings attached, but more like kind of like quantum entanglement. Like, you move one thing in the universe and something else wiggles without any cause and effect. Like everything's connected. And within that connection, I think there's movement. And when there's movement, there's cycles, just like the seasons or any other cycle we have in life. And so the only thing astrology is doing is just telling us where we're at in these cycles. I don't believe that the planets, other than the sun and the moon, I don't believe that the planets have any Newtonian effect on us, meaning some sort of like energy emitting or rays, or that the stars of Leo are doing something and emitting some kind of energy. I just believe that these planets are just doing their thing in a static rotation, which is a beautiful thing to be grateful for. Because of that static movement, we're able to tell time. We're able to have some kind of real astronomical clock to basically just tell us what time we're on in the universal sense. Where are we in these cycles? And so that's all I think astrology is. We've, through thousands of years, we notice certain things happen at certain times. We use the planets as just the watch, and then we associated Leo as Leo. These are just stars. You look at Leo, it's not really a lion. It's really just a bunch of stars. But it was given the lion instead of anything else it could have been because of what that part of the sky represents, because of what happens when these planets go into that phase of the cycle, right? And so Leo is about self-expression. When a planet goes into this part of the sky, we see themes around self-expression, and Leo is just a symbol for that, really. So it's not really that woo-woo if you think of it that way either, for those that are very scientific. And it's just a timekeeper. And if you believe we're living within cycles, it's just a way of telling time. And if you want to see what time it was when you were born, where was everything configured when you were born? That's all the birth chart is. That's all the natal chart is. And if you believe that when a seed's planted, it's planted in the soils of that time period, well, then when you were born, you were planted in the soils of that time period. And we just figure out what that time period's about. And then we can figure out kind of like what your whole life's about, in the sense that everything you do from that seed is going to take on the same shape and the same form. So that's all the natal chart is, just a snapshot of when you're born, which is just a symbolism of what your life energy is about. But like you said, I believe extremely powerful, because now we can look at things like the life path and say, okay, here's how we can further the soul. Here's how we can grow and develop. Here's where your major life lessons are. And that's how I like to approach it, right? Instead of like a predetermined way, like, oh, you're going to get married at 37, this is going to happen to you at this age or whatever. It's more like, okay, here's the cards you've been dealt. Here's the life path that you've been given when you were born. And here's some of the best ways we figured out through these thousands of years how to work with it, you know?
Yeah, and it's so important to know that, because I always say information changes situations, and when we have more information about ourselves, especially from a soul space, we can kind of have more peace in the physical space. And my life has been a movie. Like, I've never dreamed of coming to LA to do TV ever in my life. Somehow, some way, I'm always on TV, right? But when I look at my chart, it says these things, that these things are going to occur, these things are going to take place. We live in this new world of social media where people want fame, they want fortune, they want followers, they want to be influencers, whatever, which is fine. But some people are not programmed in this lifetime or conditioned from their astrology, to be famous, to make a lot of money, to be married. And so I try to be real with people, like, listen, you got to stop following everybody else's dream and follow your dream of what's in your soul. Because the more you understand that, you won't be chasing things that's not in alignment of your soul's assignment. I think that's what astrology helped me with all my life, not even knowing all this stuff early on, to like, oh, this is why I think like this is why I am in astrology, right? Uh, but it's just important to know about yourself. I always call it the book of you, right? You have the book of you and you open it up and you understand the chapter you're in. Like, you told me, like, next year in July, I'm starting a new moon. Like, I'm like, okay, a new sun, a new moon. I don't even know what that means, but maybe when we get off, we can talk about that just for a bit. But before we leave, I do want to talk about two topics, because right now we're in this eclipse. I want to say season, or like it's in Pisces, and I've been feeling it. Can you explain that? And after that, can you kind of break down the Pluto going back into Capricorn, what that means, and how do we prepare for Pluto and Aquarius moving forward? Because I think I'm feeling it all in different ways. But yeah.
Right. Yeah, let me address the Pluto thing first because you said Pluto in Aquarius, but remember that is the tropical. That is the tropical, right?
Oh, okay.
So Pluto is actually entering Capricorn for the first time in true sidereal. And it's happening now and into next year.
Right.
So this is, very significant because basically it marks this point of like major transformations
Yeah.
to the systems and structures of life. So of society, really, from like a collective sense, because Capricorn is like Saturn in the 10th house, which is basically all the foundations we depend on societally. So it's our governments, it's our financial system, it's the companies, the whole economic way we do things, all these like solid foundations. And so Pluto is the transformational planet, right? The death and the rebirth. And so the last time Pluto went into here was in the late 1700s. And that's where we saw a huge change from monarch forms of government to republic and democratic forms of government. And we noticed this oscillation. So it's 250 years with Pluto. And so every time, and you can keep tracking this, the 1500s and so forth, keep tracking this, and you see that every time Pluto comes into Capricorn, we have a major transformation to our systems and structures. So that's just starting according to true sidereal. And that's going to last like a good solid, with true sidereal, it's about 15 years, up to 20 years with Capricorn. So, it's a process, and it's starting a whole new 250-year cycle with new transformations like this. So that's obviously a big deal. That's more bigger picture though. With the eclipses, yeah, like you said, we have eclipses every year. Well, twice a year during the season. So right now we have them in the fall and we have them in the spring, and they just sort of slowly change from there. But yeah, right now it's Pisces and Virgo. So we had the lunar eclipse. We're having it now in Pisces. It's a North Node one. So the North Node collectively is in Pisces. So you're having your North Node return because your North Node's in Pisces. So when you were born, the North Node was in Pisces. So it's like that's the return. But that means for everybody right now, we're kind of all doing what you've been needing to do your whole life, let's say, in terms of going with the flow and following your soul and relaxing more and like, all that stuff you've been talking about becoming more Pisces. So that's what we're doing a status check with the lunar eclipse. It's like a full moon, but it's more important. It's a bigger life path status check. And seeing where we can do this, where we can incorporate more peace, more spiritual well-being, more soul fulfillments, more mental health and spiritual health stuff for our life. Basically now for all of us prioritizing and incorporating more Pisces. So that implies then, of course, that the South Node's in Virgo, right? Just like for your chart. So where we all are collectively right now is defaulting into maybe a lot of work or stress or trying to figure things out, a lot of this kind of busy energy, right? And but that's the South Node in the sense like what you were saying about your path, we need to make peace with and let go. It can have like it's supposed to be there, but it's supposed to be effortless. South Node is supposed to be effortless. So that's going to be arguably more challenging because we're going to have to release and clear. So South Node eclipses are more challenging because again, it's difficult to let go of the past energy and deal with past life stuff and release it. But again, super constructive and super helpful when we do it. So right now, yeah, bring a little more peace in our life. How can we do this really for the next 6 months until the next eclipses? And then in a couple of weeks, start to get into these new healthier qualities of Virgo. Improvements, refinements, great ways with Virgos like personal development, health, diet, routine, focusing on what we have control over, which is really only ourselves and our immediate environments, letting go of what we don't have control over, like these kinds of lessons of like really doing the work, but in healthy ways and with balance. Like you said, we have to balance the Virgo and the Pisces. Control, no control, doing, being, work, rest, physical and spiritual health. So that's really what the eclipse season right now is about. And yeah, the Virgo side will be more so once we get to a couple of weeks from now.
So you said 6 months we need to be in this more like North Node Pisces type of energy, right? And then
Well,
once
yeah.
we drop into the South Node of Virgo, which is more like new routines, new habits, new diet, you're saying?
Well, like, so, yeah, pretty much. But in the 6 month yearly sense, basically what we're coming up to now with the lunar eclipse is actually what started 6 months ago.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So 6 months ago, we had a solar eclipse in Pisces, which was the new beginning.
Got it.
So maybe a better way of saying that is that right now we are finalizing and maybe making a shift with incorporating still for the next 6 months, because then there'll be a new cycle that starts then. But making a shift, but at the same time also not completing, but coming to a sort of harvest, let's say, of what we've already had to be more at peace with the past 6 months, right? Now but the solar eclipse that starts now, or in 2 weeks, yes, that's going to come to its forefront 6 months from now, and that's where we'll need to make some shifts and changes with the Virgo energy. So everything, with the eclipse is basically a solar cycle, so you're dealing with a whole year, but in between you have the halfway points. That's basically what it is. So let's say this: the yearly Virgo energy is starting this month, in October, or at the beginning, for that year. And what we're experiencing now with Pisces is the halfway point of what started 6 months ago.
And last but not least, because I want to kind of like get clarity on this, because I think I might have missed the boat. So you said in true sidereal, we're actually going into Capricorn, because when I look at the tropical, they were saying from 2008 to now, we were in Capricorn. Pluto was in Capricorn, and then now Pluto. They saying like the systems, towers, the government, individualistic things, programming is falling. This is why all these celebrities are getting in trouble. But we're more into a more of a Aquarius transformation, Pluto, which is more like humanitarian, the collective, justice, fairness. But you're saying in true sidereal, we're actually entering Capricorn, right? For the next
For the first
15
time.
So where were we the last 15 years before that?
Sagittarius, 20 years. So this has been all the changes of perceptions and spiritual development we've seen. So I'm glad you brought this up, because we need to see these patterns. So think of how much the past 20 years, individually and collectively, we've all changed our perspective on life, and how it's been a transformation of belief, of perspective, and even higher than that, like spirituality and, like philosophy on life and views of life. So that's where the transformations have been. Sagittarius is a larger constellation, so it's been 20 years with them.
That makes sense. And this is why, like, when I'm getting information, I'm like, okay, I understand it from, like you said, the tropical, I understand it from the physical, right? That part, like, okay, that makes sense. Then this is coming up. But I just think in general, people should get a reading, because I believe the next 3 to 5 years, let me start now. People want to be more spiritual. They're going to want to, they care about who you are, not what you have. I think plant medicine is going to take off. And I think people are going to want to be curious about people like yourself. Like, tell me more. I want to know. Like, I got all this money, but I feel empty inside. I'm lost. I want to find my soul's purpose. And I think that's where the world is going, because all the physicality and all the material things don't mean much if they don't look the way you feel. If you're feeling empty, but you look like you got everything, then it's like we're missing the mark. And I think our soul is out of alignment. And I think light workers, astrologers, healers, coaches, neuroscience individuals, this is where their business and career is going to manifest more, because we've been running from our soul, right? We've been running from the spiritual side of life. And it's just a beautiful opportunity to have someone like you speak this in such an authentic way, but for people to know that you exist. I mean, people, I'm calling, he's going to have a show in 2 to 3 years. It's going to be on big TV, talking every morning. I don't know, Good Morning America, somewhere over, I don't know. I feel it, I see it. But is there anything you want to leave before we get off here? Anything you want to share? Definitely, share your links, and I mean, all the things that we want to find you. Like, how do we find you? Are you heavy on YouTube? Because I know you got like 80,000 subscribers on YouTube, so you have a lot of content there. But where do you live most, where we can see you, feel you, and learn from you?
Yeah, so the website. So masteringthezodiac.com. All of our resources are there, like the YouTube videos, learning astrology, free courses, content, but most importantly, the chart calculator. So that's what I really like to, especially for those new to true sidereal, which is practically everybody, to go and just type in your birth details. Even if you don't know your birth time, it's fine. We have a calculation for that. Type in your birth details and you'll see the sky visually. And there's even like a planetarium we have there, so you can see it in the actual true sky planetarium format. And like I said, just see, we have interpretations for the sun, moon, and ascendant, the big three, and just see if it resonates, see if it fits with you, and go from there. Okay, so from there we have reports, which I would say is the next good step, which I'd love to give a discount to your audience
Yeah,
for
I'll
that if
put that
they'd
in
like.
the
So
notes. Yeah, we will
yeah,
do.
put that in. So yeah, 50% off if the free one resonates. And then from there, courses if you want to learn astrology, readings with me if you want that. But again, the report has a lot to it, and content. So start with just the sky, see if it resonates, and go from there. And so everything that I offer is on the website, masteringthezodiac.com.
MasteringTheZodiac.com. Are you on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, same handle.
Yeah, mostly YouTube. Yeah, same handle, mostly YouTube and Instagram, a little bit of Facebook and a little bit of Twitter.
This was amazing. Thank you for all the wisdom, all the insight, and all the light that you brought today. Because I'm pretty sure people have, oh wow, had some epiphanies. I know I have, and thank you again. And guys, follow him, Mastering the Zodiac. Go to his website, masteringthezodiac.com, and connect with Athen. He's amazing. He's phenomenal. And this is another spiritual fitness podcast. Everyone be great. Share, subscribe, like, love yourself. It's miracle season. We out. Peace.